Australia, and I come from the Republic of Liberia. My question to you, the panelists, young people are dynamic leaders and powerful advocates of change. But in African countries, spaces for youth leadership and broader social and political participation remains constrained. What effective mechanism do you think can be put into place that will enable young people to shape opinion and lead action? Thank you.
So essentially the corridors of power are still owned by a few. So how are young people able to break in when there seems to be a cabal on power in a number of African countries?
Yeah, young people are always shut out by the older people.
Now why is that?
Well, it's because the older people have worked hard to get where they are, and they want to stay right there. They ain't going nowhere. They're going to stay right there. And so when that happens in a society, then that whole society just stops growing. And so how do young people acquire power? You certainly don't get it by waiting for someone to give it to you. You know, you have to assert yourself and go out there and make the change happen, and then go ahead and do what you think needs to be done once you're in there. And then you turn out to end up being the same way that you complained about when you were younger. When you get older, and then you get knocked off by some younger person coming along, you get the pressure to move on. And so somehow, and I'm speaking from an American perspective where we have the right to vote and where elections are generally clean and peaceful and nonviolent, but it was not always that way. In fact, 50 years ago was when the Voting Rights Act was passed that enabled African Americans to vote in mass numbers for the first time, just 50 years ago. And it took bloodshed. It took young people. Martin Luther King Jr. was a young man. He died when he was in his 30s. I think, what, 30?
39.
39? Yeah, he was a young man, but he started early. He was a civil rights activist for many years before he died, and I can tell you when Martin Luther King Jr. was coming up through the ranks of civil rights leaders, the older people, the older civil rights leaders didn't like him and they wanted to continue to lead. And he had to come in and wrestle power morally from them, and then they ended up following him. And so you have to stand for something as a young person. If you lack that courage that I talked about earlier, if you don't have courage, if you're not willing to put your life on the line, all of us are not called upon to have to do that, but all of us should have that mentality that I'm going to stand for something. If I get called upon, if that's where I end up in life, in that position where I have to either stand up and do the right thing or sit there and be quiet and let them continue doing what they're doing, and I know that it's wrong, what kind of person will you be? And so I think that one person standing alone, but standing on a strong principle, can attract others. And then with 10 people united with the same lofty aspiration, then there will soon be 100, and 100 will turn into 10,000. And so, but there might be some casualties along the way. And if you have to give your life for a lofty purpose and to serve others, what greater life could there be to live, even if that life is short? And so I think that that's the kind of leadership that young people should have in the face of old, corrupt leadership. And I believe that sometimes when confronted, that old, corrupt leadership will get fear, or they will say, okay, I realize my time is gone. And so I will yield now to the young people. And so that's been my observation as I have gone through life thus far.